Now we're going to hit the successors to Parmenides and Zeno, the guys that came after him, who are still called pre-Socratic philosophers but are contemporaries, lived at the same time as Socrates. And the first one we're going to come across is Democritus, um, who was actually from another city-state, Abdera in Greece. I think that's the way it's pronounced. If not, get on Wikipedia, you can find out. Now, Democritus was very impressed by Parmenides. He didn't know how to answer him. That is, Parmenides thought that change can never happen. It's impossible. You can't. Something can't be destroyed. Something can't come into existence, go out of existence. And Democritus comes up with a way of working around that, namely to say that everything in the world is made up of indestructible atoms. So this is the first time in history that we're hearing about anything like atoms, like our modern atoms. But don't get them confused because they're really rather different. And in certain ways, they're the same thing. That is, our modern atoms and the old atoms got their name because they are kind of these small, self-contained pieces of reality that can never be changed. They can't go out of existence. And he tries to explain the change that Parmenides says is impossible by agreeing with Parmenides in part that nothing gets destroyed, but rather atoms get reconfigured, and that's how change goes on. He tries to answer it. But then there's a group that comes up, a group that are called the Sophists. And the Sophists try to explain things in a slightly different way. And in fact, it's a position that many people take about morality today. What the Sophists argue is that, and this goes exactly against, notice Parmenides start, whatever we think, whatever we're able to think rationally, use logic and get to, has to be true. Well, what Protagoras claims is whatever a person believes, whatever he perceives to be true, that's the way the world is. So something could be true for you, false for me. So in that way, he's a relativist. And he uses this idea to try to answer Parmenides' problem. And the Sophists were not so much philosophers as wandering teachers who really got large sums of money to teach the children of very wealthy people. And classical philosophy at this point becomes sort of the struggle between Plato and Socrates, and Socrates and the Sophists. The Sophists saying everything is relative, and what they would do is try to teach their students how to convince people, how to use persuasion, emotion, to get people to agree with them. A very important political task, and that's why they got paid the big bucks as consultants. While Socrates just said, wait a second, there is an absolute standard. It doesn't matter who you are, that there are standards, and it became very important for morality. So this is where modern philosophy, or modern classical philosophy, really gives, or what we call Western philosophy, really begins. It's sort of the struggle, or the intellectual struggle, between the Sophists, one of whom being Protagoras, who had this view that things are relative, they're true relative to you, versus Socrates claiming that there are absolute values, especially in morality. But we'll get into a lot of detail. I just wanted you to become familiar with sort of the issues, notice how things moved from cosmology, from metaphysics and ontology to epistemology, knowledge, and then the turn to questions of value, questions of ethics with Socrates, Plato and Aristotle dealing with all, or at least to our knowledge, all of them. So now you got a brief overview, and we're going to start and taking a look at the Milesians, Thales, what his theory is, and why it was so important in changing the way people thought about things.